Good afternoon and welcome to Overcomers Talk. I am your host, Minister Carrie Ann Frazier, and joining me is my co-host, Minister Damietta Jeffries. She's back from vacation, y'all. You know I got to rub that in. Well, we have a topic for you today. As you know, Overcomers is about real people overcoming real issues. Yes. And the issue that we have here today is homelessness. We particularly wanted to address this topic, especially coming from COVID. So make sure that you tune in. We are going to give you some statistics that I didn't even know about. Did you know about this?
No, not all of the statistics that we're going to be enlightened with today.
Yeah.
Sometimes are just hidden, and also sometimes they're made public and we don't know how to access them. But today on Overcomers Talk, we're going to talk a little bit about those statistics and what those mean in our very own community.
Exactly. We're going to give you a breakdown of what homelessness looks like, how does someone become homeless, and then at the second half of it, we're going to talk about overcoming homelessness and what you can do in your own community, in your own home to help the community. But first, before we introduce our guest, I have to give honor to where honor is due, and that is to the visionaries of this show and this house, and that is that of Dr. Apostle Lincoln Coffee, yes, and Assistant Pastor First Lady April Coffee. We love you. Thank you so much for trusting us, yes, with this show. We are truly impacting the community with this show. I can't tell you how many times I hear people talk about the Overcomers show and how they have been blessed by it.
Well, it pleases me to hear that as well, because the vision of this house is truly to be able to provide things for the community. And so when we talk about the issues that are important in our own community, and then also how to overcome them, and how to give our community practical tools and tips that they can apply to their everyday life, that they know that they too can overcome any challenge that they may be facing.
Exactly. So if you have an issue out there that we have not yet talked about and you think it's important, definitely go ahead and email it to us, send it to us at Open Fire International Fellowship, and we will love to have you be a part of the show. We can talk about what it is that you have overcome. Yes. Okay? All right, but before we continue, I am going to introduce to you our guest. He is a dear friend. He is a servant to our community. He is a wonderful mentor to a lot of young people in the community, and that is none other than Officer Kyle Moore from the Killeen Police Department. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me.
Well, he is also, Kyle, you wear a lot of hats. You are your husband, your dad, your coach, your actor, your
dabble. No.
You dabble in a lot of different things. But I know one of your passions is definitely working with the homeless population in Killeen. And so thank you for what you do, because I know during COVID, Damietta, I was looking at the paper, and he was working so hard every day with the populations out there. So thank you for what you do. And I don't think our men and women in blue hear it enough because of the negativity.
Yes.
Right? There's so much negativity in the world out there, but we do want to pause and recognize that we do have a lot of men and women in blue who do a lot of great things for our community. Yes. And we just want to honor you and just show you that respect right now and just tell you thank you. Thank you for putting your life on the line every day, and for what you do in the community.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. It's appreciated. You know, you don't get in this for the thank yous and everything. You just got to do a job, not just a job, but if you do what you're loving every day, it makes it a lot easier. But then, when people are appreciative, not just the community, but those individuals that are receiving the help, it just makes it all the better.
Yeah. Well, we definitely appreciate you. Yes. Now, I want to jump just right into this, because I know that this topic, there's so much meat in here. I wanted to just read some statistics about homelessness, and these are national statistics, and that is 59% of Americans are a paycheck away from being homeless. So you talk about not getting paid 1 month or 1 week, and the possibility of not being able to pay your bills can put a lot of families in jeopardy of being homeless.
Yes. And I think that's a very important statistic to talk about because I think it dispels some of the myths. Sometimes people think that homelessness occurs because somebody was lazy or irresponsible or, not good stewards over their finances. But we're seeing here it's not necessarily about that. If your job has a layoff and you're affected by that, you could very well find yourself in that state very quickly,
right,
and it be to no fault of your own. So I think that's an important statistic because then it brings some truth to how close many of us really are in our very own community of facing homelessness.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think a lot of that, Minister Damietta talks about, individuals who don't have access to resources.
Yes.
Right? So if I have this amount of money in my bank account, that every time I get paid, it's enough to pay my bills, and it's enough to pay for my housing, and if I don't get paid, then essentially I have no housing. I can't pay for my bills. I don't have a savings account because I don't have access to that resources or that education to learn how to do these things. It puts populations in jeopardy of being homeless.
Yes.
The other one that really just shook my head is that over 500 people in the United States experience homelessness on any given night. And so that is 17 people per 10,000 in a population. That is high.
Yeah. So over 500,000 people, like you're saying, could experience homelessness, which really lets you know there is very a high risk out there. And so today I'm excited that we're going to be talking about what that risk looks like and how to mitigate that risk.
Yes.
Hopefully, so that you don't find yourself in that situation.
Yeah. And then for those of you who are doing well, right, what can you do? What can you do to help to serve your community? Because this is how we get better. This is how we strengthen the community, by coming from your own doors and your own comfortable homes and your own comfortable beds and truly being of service to all mankind.
Because it affects our whole community. Whether you're the person experiencing it firsthand or not, it impacts the entire community. And it is a problem we all need to be speaking about and finding ways to address.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that said, Officer Moore, I feel like I want to call you Kyle.
This is all right.
It's all right to call you Kyle.
All right, Kyle.
So I'm going to call him
I
Kyle.
was Kyle first.
You were Kyle
first.
So when we talk about homelessness in Killeen, so we gave some national statistics. What does that look like right here? A lot of us love our city, the Killeen, Harker Heights area. It is very good to a lot of us, and we live very comfortable lives, and we live safe lives.
Yes.
But there's another part. There's another population that does not necessarily experience that. Can you talk to us about what does that look like?
So, obviously you guys read the paper and you see some of the news reports that come out there, and you'll say, oh, Killeen is doing real well. The top half of Killeen is doing real well. Unfortunately, that for where my office is placed at, you have a lot of individuals who are homeless, who are low socioeconomic. There's a lot of different factors that play into types of places that people can live because of education, because of finances that they're bringing in. But we had a study back in 2018. It wasn't a study that we conducted, but it was a study that they conducted statewide and nationwide. I mean, Killeen was number one in the state of Texas in eviction. And this is pre-COVID.
Well, slow down. Say that again.
Killeen was number one in evictions in the state of Texas.
Wow.
Now, a lot of that has to do not just with the types of jobs and stuff that are here in Killeen, but also some of the housing practices that are here. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, but me working with the homeless, I've found that a lot of people actually who own property here aren't even from this area. So you'll have people that buy up property, and then it goes in like these different rabbit holes. But the problem is types of jobs, types of incomes that people are making that prevent people from moving on to pull up the bootstraps, however you want to word that.
Right. So again, we're talking about access to resources.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Lack of access to resources. So Minister Damietta, you said something that was so important, that, oftentimes the stigma of homelessness is that, they can't work, they don't want to work. And so when we talk about homelessness, what are we talking about in terms of the demographics and the population? Are these people who just don't want to work, who can't work, or what are the walks of life?
Realistically, you guys said it earlier, there are a lot of people who are a paycheck away from being homeless. And I say that every time when I go to speak about the homeless. You never know what can happen. Some people are a death away. Somebody who's the breadwinner that passed away. Somebody catches COVID or something and then passes away. Or somebody gets in a car accident. Then you have people that have mental health issues. Then you have the people that lose their jobs. You have the people that sometimes develop some sort of mental health issue that they've never had a history of it, but the overwhelming burden of taking care of family, taking care of home, taking care of school, taking care of whatever, and then people fall into a rut. I've met some people that are homeless that used to be nurses. I've met people that used to be professional people. I don't want to say doctors, but anybody. Basically, I met a guy that had a full-time job but was sleeping outside. So he's got
while he has a
full-time job. He was working security at night, and you know where Raising Cane's is at? They used to be the old Whataburger, but then it was some taco place, whatever. He literally was sleeping there, and then he had a gym membership where he'd go take a shower, and then he would go to work at night. So it's not for lack of trying for a lot of people. And then you talk about the stigma. A lot of people, when they think of homeless, they think of people just on the side of the street begging for money. That's not reality. It's part of it, but not everybody that's out there is homeless. I mean, just throw that out there. Some of the main people that we see on our street corners now are not necessarily homeless. Not to bust anybody's bubble or mess up anybody's game that they got going on. But it always amazes me when I get a phone call. Like, hey, Officer Moore, I just met this couple or I met these people on the side of the road. And they'll tell me the location. I'll be like, I know who they are. In my head, I'm like, I know who they are. They're hustling you, you know. But of course, the people that are reaching out.
That's a whole different thing.
Yes.
That's a whole. So we're talking about people who are truly homeless, who may not be necessarily hanging on the side of the road begging, and then they're individuals perpetrating like they're homeless.
The only reason I bring that up.
That's a different animal.
The only reason I bring that up is because that image sometimes falls on those individuals that are at the homeless shelters who are actually trying to get out of the rut, and they have to fight all these other stigmas. They're out there, find a good job, but then they have to fight against somebody who thinks that they're lazy or thinks that they don't want it.
Well, and how do you find a good job without an address?
There's a lot of, so what we did with our program, obviously, is just develop kind of one of those things that, and it's just trial by error. What are the things that are preventing you from moving forward? One of the biggest things is documentation. So we created a ID recovery program, I don't say we created, we emulated what some other cities were doing. We just use it here. So we help people get their birth certificates. We also help them get their social security cards. We get them Texas ID cards. Now there's some tricks to the trade in that. We don't circumvent the system. We work in the system, and we just try to do what we can to help them get those documents to help them move forward. Because guess what? You can't get a house, you can't get a job, can't get an apartment, can't get education without what? An ID.
An ID.
So starting with the basics and then moving forward. So
wow.
I think that's so important how you just talked about the different faces of homelessness, because I do think most people or many people would tend to think that homelessness is limited just to the people they see on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And while you're saying this man had multiple jobs and was going these places, no one would deem him homeless because he's working, even though he technically fits the profile of being homeless.
Pride keeps people in places as well. So sometimes I found it's hard for people to reach out for help because they don't want that.
They don't want the stigma.
Yeah, I hate to use the word, but I'm not a bum or I'm not a whole, you know, people use those derogatory terms. But sometimes it's just a little humble pie, everybody needs help. You know, as long as that help is coming from a good place. Whereas, I've heard horror stories, but not to take it too far out, but sometimes people expect something from you for me to help you. You know what I'm saying? So
It's like a quid pro quo.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and that's some things we got to look out for, and I try to keep an ear out for those individuals.
Yeah. I was looking at another statistics on here. It said 70% of people experiencing homelessness are individuals who are living on their own or in the company of other adults. The remainder 30% are people in families with children. And so I know a lot of the schools have a homeless program where the children, like the HARP program, the children are fed, they're given clothes. And so that's during the day, right, if they go to school. But then what happens at night when school is over?
To be honest, that's a demographic that's not even counted towards like city totals. So
So you don't count the children. You just count homeless adults.
so those individuals that are counted in KISD that qualify as HARP don't necessarily get counted under the HUD definition of homelessness.
Why is that? Do you know?
It's I can give you my version of it. It's kind of like, hey, go count the homeless, but I'm gonna tie your hands behind your back.
Yeah.
So, we do what's called a point in time count every year, so where we can try to get our numbers. But because of COVID this year, we opted out of doing the point in time count. Point in time count is just a snapshot, 1 day, 24-hour period where we go out and count the homeless. And we report those numbers to Texas Homeless Network, which is based out of Austin, and they count for the whole state. We didn't do it in 2021, but we last did it in 2020, and we counted 409 individuals that were experiencing homelessness, whether they were in a shelter, permanent supportive housing, or in those places deemed uninhabitable, houses under bridges, in parks, things of that nature. We're actually looking to do a summer point in time count where we're going to do a 2-week period, just like City of Temple did, and we're going to try to count as many people we can in that 2-week period. We have that coming up. Some of my interns are planning that as we speak right now.
Wow.
But you're only able to count those that are in those particular designated
Spaces.
areas, because you have many people sleeping on people's couches who are
Yeah.
deemed homeless.
Yeah.
Many people sleeping, with friends, but because they're not in those designated places, then
They're
we
not-
know that number is skewed to begin with, because there are so many that will not be accounted for.
Yeah.
And they refuse to go to the shelter. They refuse to be seen as, like I said, it's just that negative connotation is that we got to try to fight through. Like, hey, there's help available
Right.
for you. But you're exactly right. Those individuals who couch hop, or you have those individuals who their moms lost their job and all of a sudden they're sleeping with not sleeping, but sleeping at their friend's house with their kids so they can still go to school.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it happens a lot. A lot.
Wow. So that's a whole other population
Yes.
that we really didn't count. And so, again, I said for males, it says homelessness is significantly defined by gender. 60% of all people experiencing homelessness are male. So that's more than half. And among individuals, the number is starker, that 70% are men and unaccompanied male youth. So we're talking about young men, young adult males. Is that something that you find, Kyle?
I do, and here's the reason why. Just think about it. Think about the resources that are available right now. First time when you think about it, vets, number one, right?
Okay, so veterans.
Domestic violence.
Okay.
How many resources are available for those individuals experiencing domestic violence as far as women?
Right.
I'm not saying that men can't be victims of domestic
Right.
violence.
So you have resources for women,
Yes.
but men who are
Yes.
victims, there aren't a lot of resources.
A lot of resources. It's unfortunate, but there's sometimes a demographic that's forgotten. Now, there's another reason why I would say women are underreported, because sometimes women stay in situations that are not necessarily safe, so they're not out on the street.
To avoid homelessness.
To avoid
Avoid being homeless. Wow.
So, it's unfortunate. Like I said, it's a crazy game.
Yeah.
That makes me think too what you're saying, officer, because if there's a high population of male who are experiencing homelessness with no or very little resources, and then we wonder why they go down this life of crime.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, everybody got to eat.
Yeah.
So if I can't go and get resources, if I'm deemed not vulnerable, then people start making their own ways.
Yeah.
And so then there has to be some correlation with this homeless male who now is turning to maybe illegal activity to make it on his own if he feels forgotten in the resources or forgotten by his community.
Like I say, hammer on the head right there. I mean, as far as I've always said, being homeless is not a crime.
Right.
And that's really important for people to understand. And, we have to, with the homeless outreach team, because I'm under the guise of police department, I have to find a fine balance in helping those individuals that are experiencing homelessness, but then also assisting those individuals who own businesses, who are homeowners, who have to experience or deal with, I hate to use the word deal with, but you open a business and you have somebody sleeping in front of your business.
Right.
Yes.
So it's a fine balance.
Yeah.
I know you're homeless, sir or ma'am. However,
you can't sleep
you
on
can't
the
sleep in
porch,
front of
right?
their business. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
there's a common sense factor. I understand that you're homeless. I can help you,
Right.
but I cannot do it for you, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah. So it's a very precarious
Yeah.
situation that you're in, and it's a fine line where you're helping the homeless, but your role is also to protect and to serve the community, which are the businesses, which are the different homeowners as well. Wow. One of the other statistics, and I just really wanted to bring these statistics to you because they are so staggering, and it's very important when we talk about the homeless population for us to really understand, like Minister Damietta said, why some of the things are in our community. So if we talk about a large population of young men, right, and young men who may be kicked out of the home, who are exiting foster care system
Yes.
with no alternate life plan or individual living plan, or even young men whose mother, right, is in a domestic violence situation and that mother goes to the shelter. A lot of shelters don't take male children. And so that male child may need to go live with another relative. And the reason we wanted to bring that to you, because I really want the community to understand when we talk about homelessness, what this looks like, and to break down the different segments, the different populations, and the demographics of people who are homeless in our community. So if it's your desire to help, you have a deeper understanding of why people are homeless and what that homelessness looks like. So when we talk about mental health, oftentimes if you're homeless, you don't have an address, it's going to be hard to get your medication, right? And even maintain doctor's appointments.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yes. Mental health is probably, I mean, obviously I have no, quantitative data to support this, but I would just say that
From your
from my
experience.
experience, I would say about 80% of the individuals experiencing homelessness are affected by some sort of mental health
Right.
Issues. MHMR, excuse me, they don't call them MHMR anymore, but Central County
Central
Services.
counties.
They do a good job as far as trying to deal with two things. Number one, deal with the population as far as providing resources to them, but also dealing with the pandemic as well.
Yeah.
So when the pandemic hit, it kind of affected those individuals being able to go into those offices where now they're you got to do stuff by phone. So it's like, well, they don't have a phone.
Exactly.
So it's like, all right. And then some of their outreach teams, I say outreach, but they're people that go out, were kind of limited on exposure
Because of COVID?
because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it had, I don't want to say an adverse effect, but it had the effect that to be expected if you're not on top of those
Yeah.
individuals. And that's no fault of anybody's. That's just a force of.
You talk about systemic issues.
Yes.
Right?
So,
Systemic issues. And so you did your point in time in 2020. It wasn't done in 2021. Now, we've had COVID for a year. This pandemic we've been living in. How did the pandemic affect your homeless population?
I would say that it affected them, the ones that were in the shelter, they were already there. So, but as far as having those new individuals who were homeless, it did play a part. For those individuals who didn't have who worked in bars. I know of two specific cases. Obviously, I won't use their names, but they were bartenders. They made good money, whatnot. And then when the bars went closed, they were like, and it wasn't. And obviously, they had the eviction moratorium.
Right.
But what people unfortunately started doing was the loopholes. So I'm not going to evict you because you're not paying your rent, but I'm going to evict you because you violated the lease in somehow.
In some other
Yeah.
area.
Some other area.
Or we're not going to renew your lease. So your lease came up. Well, guess what? We're just not going to renew your lease.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I mean, and wow. So we talk about bars, we talk
Wow.
about restaurants, you talk
Just
about
him saying
hair
that
shops being
with
closed.
the loophole.
Yeah.
So they could simply just not renew your lease, and
Yeah.
that wasn't in violation of the eviction.
No,
moratorium.
it's not.
and some of these big
Wow.
companies, not to I'm not going to use any names, but some of these bigger companies, they won't advertise that. They'll just do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And when you think during COVID, Minister Damieta, of how many businesses were closed for an extensive period of time, and that was the only income
Yes.
some families had. And even with the moratorium, as you said, there's some loopholes. You don't get my lease renewed. And then a lot of people, again, fear of the pandemic, didn't necessarily want to take additional people into their home, especially
Yes.
you already don't have enough toilet paper. And now you got to take
Yes.
people into your
Yes.
home, and then you don't have enough food. And so I would imagine that those COVID that the numbers of homelessness actually rose, at least at some point of the past 12 months.
without a doubt,
Yeah.
I'll say my interns here a little bit later, but the phone calls that I get are not just the people that you see on the streets downtown. I get phone calls from everybody, and man, when Snowvid hit, oh man,
I forgot about Snowvid.
Yes.
when
Yeah.
obviously a lot of the main hotels lost power, lost
Yeah.
water. And so obviously with my resources, I went to some of these locations, and then I found out that there's like 40, 50 people per hotel. It's not just they're there because the ice storm, they're there because they've been living there. And
Wow.
so you have individuals who technically, HUD doesn't consider you homeless if you're living from hotel to hotel to hotel. That's one of those, I know he's homeless, but because he paid for his room that night, I can't count him on the day that we do the
Right.
time count. But you have that individual, so many individuals that were families living in there. It's like you're paying $1,200, $1,300 to stay in a hotel for a month. Why don't you go get an apartment? But then that's when the whole other gamut of trying to help those individuals who are homeless, who have criminal records, who have credit issues, who have rental history.
So those are some of the barriers
Yes,
for
ma'am.
people who may be able to get some money,
Oh,
but then they cannot necessarily get a lease because there's a criminal history, there's a poor credit history, and so nobody's willing to allow, or really give them a second chance. What else?
so you take an individual who makes, and that's why I'm so fortunate to work with some of the landlords that are working with the homeless outreach team, not exclusively, but they work with me to give individuals who are working through our program a second chance, third, fourth, and fifth chance. Take an individual who's receiving Social Security, say $800, right? Most of the time, you have to have 2 or 3 times the rent in order to live in an apartment.
Because you need the first and last month's rent, you need a deposit.
Well, you need 2 to 3 times the income to even qualify
There you go.
for the apartment.
And realistically, those individuals will never make 3 times the rent. So you may have an apartment that's $395. That's perfect for them, but they're not able to qualify because that mark is set just high enough for them. I've had some landlords and property owners who say, you know what, I'd rather. Now they can't specifically say I'm not going to rent to them, but I'd rather not because they bring problems. They will run off.
They have a history.
They have a history. They'll run off my good tenants and then they'll tear up the place. And I mean, I know you talked about the demographics as far as you talking about black, white, Hispanic. Obviously, Colleen is unique. So I would say I probably see about the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
because Colleen is a very diverse community, and I know this is being aired all over.
Yeah.
And so Colleen is a very diverse community, and so when we look at proportions of individuals who are homeless, we're talking about it's kind of even across the board: white, black, Hispanic, and everything in between. And so wow, that's a lot of barriers, right? So that's a lot of barriers, and then put on top of it somebody who's experiencing health or mental health issues.
Yes.
Right? Or people with small children who may have child protective services cases.
Oh,
Yes.
And they're really trying to mitigate some of the concerns that they already have in their life. How do you get ahead? How do you get over the barriers? Essentially, what this show is about, how do you overcome?
Yes.
How do you overcome? And that's exactly where we are going to go to is how do you overcome these issues? Because when we talk about that, the average family, 59% to be exact, of American families are a paycheck away from being homeless. And like Officer Moore said, there might be a death of a breadwinner away from being homeless, right? They might be one COVID case away from being homeless. And we're not speaking those things onto anybody's life. That is not the way that I'm saying it. I really don't want anybody to receive it that way. But what we want to talk about is some factual things here when it comes to homelessness. But we also know that faith changes facts,
yes,
and that you are able to overcome any situation. So what we're going to do when we come back, we're going to take a short break, is that we're going to give some practical application of how individuals have overcome. We're going to talk to you about resources that are right here in the Bell County area for people who live in the Killeen, Waco, Temple, Lampasas area. We're going to tell you who that you can connect with. And if you are not in the Texas area, we can tell you, necessarily who in your community that you can connect with. And for those of you who have a desire to serve your community, we're also going to give you some information on what you can do, how you can volunteer, and what resources you can contribute in order to help your community overcome this problem of homelessness. We have some news from our sponsors, and we will be right back. Also, if you're interested in sponsoring the Overcomers Talk or sharing your story, go ahead and send us a message, send us an email. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions watching live on Facebook or YouTube, just go ahead and type them right in there. Yeah. Somebody is looking for your comments, and we will definitely answer your questions live on the air. We will be right back. And welcome back. I am your host, Minister Carrie Ann Zamore Frazier. My co-host is Minister Damietta Jeffers, and we have been talking about homelessness one-on-one with Officer Kyle Moore. And so we are now joined on the second half by one of his social work interns, and that is Miss Veronica Gibbons. Thank you so much for being here. Hi. All right, you know, social workers rock, right?
Yes, we do.
Thank you so much for being here. So you are a student intern with Officer Moore.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What's your university?
Central Texas College. Texas A&M.
Texas A&M Central
Yes,
Texas.
sorry, I just graduated from CTC. So
oh, okay, see, and you're a little nervous. It's okay.
Yeah.
It is okay. Thank you so much for joining us. And so you have been working with Officer Moore with the homeless population. What has that been like for you? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Oh, wow. Amazing to be able to give back to the community. Initially, I didn't want to intern with that population because I'm more into children. Mm-hmm. And I'm so happy that I had the opportunity to come aboard with him and see. Now I have a different perspective on it altogether because I'm one of those people who, and I'm not ashamed to say it, I used to be like, why don't you find a job, clean somewhere, do something? But then I learned about all the barriers. ID. You can't do nothing without your ID card. You can't do nothing without a physical address. And now I'm really excited about working with him.
Awesome. So how long have you been working with the homeless population now?
Since January.
Okay, so you're still kind of new.
Yeah.
You're still kind of new. Okay, awesome. So what are some of the barriers you have seen, Veronica?
Oh, wow. Let me see. I'm a little bit nervous. So sorry. Jobs, education, address. One of the main things is having a physical address. Mm-hmm. Not being able to communicate with them via phone because they don't have a phone. Mm-hmm. Stigmas.
What is
stigmas?
Oh, the stigmas.
Yes, that's the biggest thing that a lot of them don't want to be identified as homeless because of people looking down on them being homeless. But again, I would say that I'm really happy because I was listening early on. I was one of those people who my significant other passed away 6 years ago, and me and my son was living in a car. Not that we choose to.
So you were homeless yourself?
Yes, and I was a victim of domestic violence. So to me, it's just like you really never to know what could put you in this situation. So it's not good to just be judgmental or assume that a person wants to be in that situation. I have a lot of conversations with people, and I'm like, do you think somebody just wake up one morning and say, I'm aspiring to be a homeless person?
Right.
No.
Right.
No.
How long were you and your son in your car?
Probably like for about 6 to 9 months.
6 to 9 months,
Yes.
you and your son in your car. How old was he at the time?
Oh, wow. He is about to be 16 this year. So 10 years.
He was about 10 years old.
ago. Yeah,
Wow.
he was 10 years.
Wow.
That is really, shocking to hear you say that after you've already said what your perception was.
Yes.
Yeah.
So knowledge is enlightening
Yes.
because you said even though you experienced it firsthand, you still had a very negative perception
The stigma.
when you saw others. Although you knew when it was your experience, it wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
It wasn't from being lazy. It wasn't from lack of trying. It's just circumstances. And so how much more for us who have not experienced it, that we have to be more sensitive to it, because like you said, you lived it and yet still battled with the negative perception when you saw others.
And this, to me, this was my thoughts prior to me experiencing.
Prior to your experience.
Prior to me experiencing homelessness myself.
Okay.
And that's not something that we want to talk about or broadcast. Again, you're
Yeah.
ashamed, and people look down on you, and people assume that you're just lazy. You don't want to do nothing. But again, I had just talked to him, and next phone call I got was, he's no longer here with us. So, Yeah.
Yeah. When you say he's no longer, you mean he passed on?
He passed away.
All right. So essentially, just like you said, one family member, a breadwinner away. And so, wow, Veronica, thank you so much for being transparent
Yes.
and sharing what it is that you went through. And so we truly have an overcomer in our midst, because not only did you go through that situation, she went through it. You know, that could preach, and you're going to preach that, right?
You can preach it.
She went through that situation,
Yes.
but she's in college. She is in college, and you are studying social work, and you are working with this population. Now, if this isn't a testimony of overcoming, moving on, and growing, girl, you go, girl.
And she's a great mom too. So
And
I gotta
she's
throw
a
that out
great
there.
mom.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And I think that's why she works real well with the population, because she can relate,
Yeah.
not necessarily having to tell people her story,
Right.
but being able to empathize with those individuals. I think empathy is a big thing. So,
That's such a good thing that you said. Empathy is a big thing, because oftentimes we will sympathize, right, with people, but empathy and sympathy are two different things.
Yes.
And it's when you can really put yourself in that person's shoe and say, if it were not for the grace of God, there go I.
Yeah.
Yes.
That could be me. That
Yeah.
could have, that could have been anybody
Yes.
that I know. And then it could be the person you're passing down the street that's smiling at you. You know, how often do we look at somebody and we say, how are you doing? But we don't even wait for an answer to find out how they are really
Yes.
doing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Wow, wow. And so, talking about the barriers, you had some intentional and tangible things that you did to overcome those barriers. Did you have support? Did you have access to resources?
Actually, no. I had nobody but my son. I have no family in Texas. It's just my son and I. But my spouse, he was my biggest supporter. So, and mental health, I went into a phase of depression. For the first time in my life, I thought about, if I'm not here, I wouldn't have to go through all this. You know, but I had made a promise to him, because he was always pushing me, go to school, do what you want to do, along with my grandma. And then I had lost my grandma too. I lost my dad 9 months before him. You know, so my job was to go ahead and show him that even though you're not here, I'm going to continue. I'm going to do what it is I have to do. And I also wanted to show my son that it doesn't matter what background you have, what you experience in life, where you come from, that you could do anything that you set your mind to doing. You are your limit.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
You know,
are your limit.
most people say the sky is your limit, but people been to the sky. I am my limit.
Yeah. Wow. And so it's your mindset, right? It's how you're thinking about yourself and your situation and how you get out of it. Wow. That is awesome, Veronica. This is,
Yes.
she's just a walking testimony.
Yeah, and that's great. And we're so thankful for your testimony. One of the scriptures and verses that we use really as our foundational for this show is that you overcome by the blood of the Lamb, by
Yes.
the word of your testimony. And so you sharing your testimony is really a great testament to the overcoming power of Jesus, right?
Yes.
As well as for those who are in it, you know, like you said, to say that I've been where you are now. I've had the suicidal thoughts. I've had the what if I'm not here?
Yeah.
I've had the lost and alone feeling, and yet here I am. You know, and so the ability to come on and truly be a living testament of overcoming is more than we could even ask for. You know,
Yeah.
we really thought you were gonna just come and go
As a
the
social worker.
statistics and as a social worker, but we
Yeah.
certainly appreciate that you are being human in front of us, because you have no idea how you're helping a viewer. You
Yes.
have no idea how just somebody hearing someone who's walked in those shoes, because many times people are tired of the sympathy and they really need the empathy.
Yes.
They really need to say, I know you're sorry, but you haven't felt what I felt.
Yeah.
I know you're sorry, but you haven't walked in these shoes. And so you being able to say that is powerful, woman of God. And so we thank you for coming and sharing today.
Yes, definitely,
welcome, no
definitely.
problem.
I know you're blessing someone right now. And for those of you who want to help, right? So what are some of the resources? Because I know you guys are very busy working. You are in the community. You are in the field. You are in the trenches. This is truly boots on the ground. Literally, you wearing boots?
Yeah.
Okay. This is literally boots on the ground. So what are the resources for individuals who find themselves homeless? So somebody who might be out there couch surfing right now, knowing that you are homeless and that there's help out there. Don't let your pride stand in the way. Don't let the stigma stand in your way, because they are here to help you get from surviving to thriving, right? We want to do more than survive. We want to thrive.
So you have the shelters, obviously. You have Friends in Crisis. You have Families in Crisis. Families in Crisis has a women's shelter here in Clean and in Temple. You have the Salvation Army.
Okay,
that's
so I'm going to stop you right there. So we talk about shelters. Some people might have a stigma. I ain't going to no shelter. I'm sleeping on baby and them couch, right? Why is it important for people to be counted in a shelter?
I think it's important because, number one, it gives you some stability. Having that for sure place where you can be at, where if you're working with us, we know where you're at. You know, sometimes you may be out there on the street, or you may be in an abandoned building or under a bridge or whatnot, but then weather may take you somewhere else.
Right.
So when we may have an appointment, we show up, it's like, oh man, where did such and such go? Whereas if you're at the shelter, like I said, it's just a place to lay your head, wash your body, get you something to eat, and then get you, and it saves money. So a lot of times people, I'm saying a lot of times, more often than not, especially those individuals with families, they'll hustle and do whatever they can to do to try to go get a hotel room because they don't want their family to be in the hotel. First off, I'm going to tell you, if your kid is under 5 years old, he ain't going to remember it anyway. So take your kid there. It saves you money. You put $300 in a week to stay at a hotel, and you're calling us, like, hey, more. Do you have any hotel voucher programs? No. Hotels are a black hole where I could just throw money. It's like throwing money at a problem
It's a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid. It really doesn't heal the wound
on a bleed. You know
yeah.
So, like I say, the shelter is not meant for everybody. I get it. Sometimes mental health plays a role.
Right.
Where I can't be in that environment. Like, I don't want to be around those types of people. Not types of people. I don't want to be around a lot of people.
You don't want to be around a lot of people. It's overwhelming.
Or those individuals who have been to jail. There's PTSD for those individuals who have been in jail for whatever reason.
Right.
And it's like a dorm type setting in the men's side and in the women's side. But as far as those resources, like I said, it's just a place to lay your head and have some sort of stability in place to lay your head, where you don't have to worry about the weather. You don't have to worry about anybody attacking you or doing anything of that nature. You have other organizations that are out there that have Miss Gilmore, T3L. You have Heritage House. They don't have necessarily a housing facility, but they have how I've always looked at it. You have the Friends in Crisis who help those who are in the shelter. You got Heritage House, or the Open Door, who help those individuals who are out there on the street. You go there, set up appointments. Obviously, you got Salvation Army in Temple. You have the Cove House in Corpus Cove. You have Hilltop.
Feed My Sheep.
Feed My Sheep is another resource that helps us with the homeless. But you have Hilltop that just opened up that is for women, 25 and under. You have Central Texas Youth Services that have the Option House. And then they have their drop-in center that assists individuals from 17 to 25.
Right.
So there are a lot of resources. And then you have the homeless outreach team, obviously through KPD. You know, sometimes when I started this in 2018, I had to fight through the stigma of a police officer helping. You know, because you're a police officer, I'm wearing a uniform, I show up. Homelessness and police officers have a negative, like you're here to take me to jail. And then here I am showing up, hey, you hungry? Let's go get something to eat. You know what I'm saying? Where I had the ability to go ahead and do that, to open up.
So you actually pay for people's food.
Yeah.
You go on, are you hungry? And you get them food and you pay for it.
Yes. So let me just say this. I started out early, and you talked about those resources to help, what you can do to help. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the stuff I started doing is like I work a couple off-duty jobs. I have an extra couple dollars, and I would just do it on my own. But thankfully, through the city and through the chief and everybody agreeing, helping me to establish the program, we have a donation account that because paying for birth certificates, Texas IDs, you name it, shoes for slip resistant shoes, pants, whatever the case may be, it's not free. So we have a couple of churches that donate to us.
Did you say you were paying for all of this throughout your own pocket initially when you started? Is that what he said?
He said that.
You're out of your own
Tell my wife
pocket.
that.
I think she's watching.
Where that $20? No, but and then I cannot. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of the people that's been there. Lulac, JJ, a business owner by the name of JJ. We actually had an apartment that we had for those individuals with families where a guy was paying the rent. We had it for a year and a half. We were able to help 33 families. We didn't broadcast it, but instead of people putting them in hotels, we were able to bring in, we had Ashley's Furniture furniture for families that came in, furnished it for us. All the food banks, we kept it furnished with food. It's basically an apartment we would take people to help people get established until they can transition into their own apartment. We're actually looking to try to do that again.
So that program is no longer the apartment. That program is no longer in existence?
Yes, ma'am. It's no longer. We're in the. We did it for a year and a half, and like I said, it was a blessing. You have to appreciate the blessing that it was given to us. But I'm also looking for other landlords and other property owners who are willing to work with us in order to try to establish that again.
Wow.
That's awesome. It just reminds me of a scripture that, the Bible says that, you lend to God when you give to the poor. It is the only opportunity you get to lend to God is when you give to the poor. And so that is awesome that you said, even in the onset, you just were giving. You were just giving. You were just giving. We pray that God will reward you greatly for that, man of God, because the Bible says that it is that during those times you loan something to God. And we know God is faithful and that he shall repay you and reward you for that. And so we encourage either other landlords that you remember the scripture that says,
Lend.
that it is when you take care of the poor, you are lending to God. And so we pray that God will put that on the hearts of landlords, that he will put that on the heart of rental agencies, that we will put that on the heart of neighbors, because again, it affects all of us, because you live in your nice house now, but if someone is homeless and they partake on that end of the block, then your property value is going to be affected.
Blessed.
Your thing's going to be affected. So we definitely want to take this on as a community and not be them versus us.
Yeah, definitely. And Kyle, I'm just listening to everything you said about how in 2018, when this was placed on your heart, so you were a beat cop, essentially, and you saw a need and you began to fill that need out of your pocket. And then what I'm hearing is that businesses begin to partner with you and give onto you. And then you essentially grew a program.
Yes, ma'am. I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to take full credit for the idea. When Chief Kimball came in 2017, him and Commander Davis at the time basically walked around the city, and wherever Chief Kimball came from, he had a homeless outreach team. So he put it out there. He has a way of suggesting things without saying, hey, do this, right? So Commander Davis puts it out, and I remember putting my name in the hat. I remember seeing the announcement, hey, homeless outreach team. So I put my name in the hat. I would like to think my bubbly personality helped me get the job. But I got the job, and here's my thinking. I'm thinking, hey, all right, give you
a team.
No.
Give me some
number one, give me a team resource. But here's how you do it. No, it was, all right, Kyle.
Go do it.
Go make it happen. And it was like, and so it was like studying, going to Austin, going to these different places, and basically taking bits and pieces of different outreach teams across the state of Texas and trying to form our own thing here, which evolved to what it is now. So what I was doing in 2018 is, I got interns now, man. We got intake forms. We have things that we have follow-ups. We have all these things we're working on as far as getting people into housing, which is the ultimate goal. And like I said, well, for what works for this individual doesn't necessarily work with this individual.
Right.
So, and I'm a firm believer, reach one, teach one. So here I am, some police officer, but people talk. So when it was like, Officer Moore, hey, Officer Moore, and then they talk to all the other people,
right?
And then now they start to come. It's like, hey, you need your ID? Come holler at the team, and then we'll get you squared away to try to get you your ID to get you a job or get you a place. One of the blessings, obviously, this stimulus checks that have been coming through goes towards what we talked about earlier. Now you got $1,400 sitting in your pocket, but now you don't have an opportunity because people won't rent to you. People won't do whatever, you know what I'm saying? Some people just need that extra hand. So now I got a little bit over to pay that. But it's just
they need some grace.
Yes, and give people opportunities. And I believe, I get it. If you've been burned, I get it. I can't judge you. All I can say is that you hold the keys to a lot of people's future. But there's a lot of organizations that are out there, endeavors, and I just mentioned all the agencies that are out there that I work with, Bell County Indigent, You have, I said, the Heritage House, Central Texas Youth Service. These are people that I work with pretty much every day. Habitat for Humanities, Miss Janice and them at the Clean Housing Authority. So, and then all the churches, numerous churches, Skyline Baptist, Liberty Christian Center. You guys have even put on some things I've seen. You know, we talked about an event that's coming up for the homeless. Is you have
the Operation Stand Down.
Operation Stand Down.
Okay. Can you talk to us about what Operation Stand Down is, the day, the time, and how individuals can get involved in that?
So if you really want to get a hold, it was started by Miss Joanne Cortland. She's a city council member in Carpers Cove, but she wasn't a city council member when she started. But it started out initially for vets, basically trying to bring all the resources that can help homeless individuals, whether it be vet services, whether it be indigent health care, Medicaid, all these different organizations that provide
tons of resources.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So you bring all these individuals in one place. We also provide you, Operation Stand Down provides you a meal, free giveaways, haircuts, sometimes vision and teeth checks, things of that nature. It's going to be May 8th.
So May 8th coming up, May 8th,
Now,
Operation Stand Down, where?
It's going to be at the Clean Civic Center.
Civic Center.
I want to believe it starts at 9 o'clock, but don't quote me on that.
Where can we find information on Operation Stand Down?
So if you Google Operation Stand Down Central Texas, or if you contact me, if you wanted to volunteer, which they do need volunteers because she believes that a homeless person should have a volunteer with them the whole trip, carrying their things for them and things of that nature. It's a great opportunity. She wants you to be at least 18 years of old, or older, but contact Central Texas, Operation Stand Down Central Texas, based out of Corpus Cove, and you have to do their mandatory training in order to come out there and volunteer. But if you
and how does someone get in touch with you if they want to ask you more questions? Can you just go ahead and throw your email or phone number or whatever you're comfortable with out there?
So you can contact Officer Kyle Moore. Email is kmoore, KMOORE, at Killeen, KILLEEN, Texas, spelled out, .gov. Or you can contact me on my phone number at 254-423-7553. That's my cell. And then my office number is 254-501-8874. So you talk to one of my lovely co-workers.
Awesome. So you guys got some resources here. So if you know someone who's homeless, couch surfing in a hotel, or whatever their situation, Operation Stand Down is at least one place where we can start to access resources. Can they get ID cards through there?
So I'm actually getting ready to participate in the Police Unity Tour May 8th. Through the 14th, but my interns will be there. They'll have a sign-up sheet for those individuals of the services that we provide. There's something I didn't even mention as far as family reunification, working with Feed My Sheep. So sometimes we talk about that pride. Sometimes we do a little detective work. So, hey, we find out you got family out in California that haven't seen you in a year, wondering why you haven't contacted them because you've been living on the street. We help facilitate that bus ride back to that's through Feed My Sheep. Shout out to Feed My Sheep. They're awesome. Also, I'd be remiss because Ms. Jones would make me would be mad at me if I didn't mention it. We're actually coordinating the homeless informational block party. We usually do that twice a year, but we're going to do it the 15th of May as of right now. So it'll be a big block party right in front of the homeless shelter. We'll bring a lot of those same organizations that will be there during
May
Operation Stand Down, but we also try to invite. We have DJ. We'll have like a barbecue.
Like a big barbecue for the homeless where they're able to come and get some of the same resources. So you heard it here. May 8th, Operation Stand Down at the Killeen Civic Center. You can get a lot of information, a lot of resources. You can also reach out to Officer Moore. He had his information there. And then May 15th, he talked about the homeless block party where, again, you can have tons of resources. So you definitely do not have to be trapped by pride or the stigma of homelessness, because there are resources, there are people here to help. As you heard from Veronica's story, you can overcome homelessness. Not only did she overcome it, oh my gosh, she is thriving, not just surviving. She is a social work college student. And woman of God, I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. Keep on doing what you're doing. You got a whole tribe now rooting for you. And when you're about to graduate, we want you to come back so we can celebrate you here on Overcomers Talk, and you can share some of your story. And we would just love to celebrate you truly being an overcomer by the word of your mouth, and again, by that testimony. We want to hear it. We want to see that plaque. We want to see that 4.0 GPA. And, you know, we definitely want to put our arms around you and just embrace you. And keep on doing what you're doing. Officer Moore, once again, thank you so much for what you do in the community. And we know that there's a lot of negativity about law enforcement out here. But we want to tell you personally, thank you for what we see you doing in the community, because you didn't have to sign up for the job, but you did. So thank you. Minister Damietta, what would you like to close with?
Just want to close with, again, some thank yous as well. Thank you for being a servant in the community. I reside right here in Killeen, and so thank you for your services to me and my family personally.
Thank you.
You know, and also to the woman of God, again, thank you and congratulations on your success. I mean, even to graduate from CTC, you know, it's definitely an achievement. You know, that it took a lot of tenacity and endurance to get past stigmas and even self-doubt. So we just appreciate you for being a beacon light on the show today. I'm encouraged today.
I'm encouraged too. I'm excited.
I'm enlightened because some of these statistics I didn't know, and it really reveals how naive sometimes we really are, that we really do think it's very black and white and very simple, but it really is a complicated obstacle. It needs the community and the village to help us all overcome it. So I'm encouraged on today.
So if you're still watching and you want to help, if there's some way that you want to put your hand to the plow, you heard it. May 8th and May 15th, definitely you can volunteer for Operation Stand Down. Make sure you tune in next Sunday live. We're talking about overcoming COVID. We're going to be talking to the Salabria family. That's Joel Salabria out of Austin. He is a worshiper, and Joel had a devastating bout with COVID where man said he wouldn't make it, but God turned it around.
Amen.
He's going to be here with his lovely wife, and he's also going to do a worship segment for us. I tell you, coming from a ventilator to praising God.
Oh, wow.
I can't wait to share his testimony with you next week. Thank you so much for joining us here on Overcomers Talk. The recap will be this Thursday at 7 o'clock, and we will see you next Sunday live again on Overcomers. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you so much.